give a person a fish, they eat for a day. But if you teach them how to fish, they'll eat forever. So Success Central is in the teach them how to fish business. Our goal, ultimately, is to work ourselves out of a job.
Welcome to the Ask You Telling Our Story podcast. I am your host, Leticia Maldonado, a proud member of the post-secondary value team at the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. In this series, we share stories from state colleges and universities that have taken bold steps to foster greater accessibility and affordability for underrepresented communities. We will get an inside look at how they are closing completion gaps, connecting students to viable career opportunities, and creating a more just, equitable society. Greetings to all of our listeners. In this episode of the Ask You Telling Our Story podcast, we'll be learning about a successful peer coaching initiative known as Success Central, created to connect first-generation students with student mentors to support their pursuit of academic and personal goals at Central Connecticut State University. Joining us are Dr. Zulma Toro, President of Central Connecticut State University, Dr. Reginald Simmons, Professor and Chair of the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice, and Supervisor of the Success Central program, and Tori Wallington, Central Connecticut State University student and former mentee, mentor, and now mentor coordinator in the Success Central program. Dr. Toro, Dr. Simmons, Tori, welcome.
Thank you, Leticia. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with all of you today.
Leticia, thank you for having us and inviting us to tell the Success Central story. It's an honor.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm really excited to be a part of this.
Now, Dr. Simmons, I'd like to start with you by asking you to please give our listeners an overview of the Success Central program. What is the program and how did it get started?
Sure. So we select and train junior and senior students in college life coaching techniques. And they use those techniques to mentor first and second year students at our university. And let me just provide a little context regarding kind of how we started our origin story, so to speak. So in 2014, the provost at the time issued a call for proposals to faculty and staff at CCSU, asking for ideas regarding how to address retention and graduation. And one area that a person could respond to was minority student retention and graduation. And I'm a professor in the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice. And I looked at our data, and we were the most popular major among Latina students, and the second most popular major among Black and African American students. And we're a large major. Retention and graduation rates of Black and Latina students were lower than the general student population. And so I thought, well, what can I propose to address that? And I'm a psychologist by training. And what we always are taught to do is, when in doubt, look at the data and look at research. And so I did a lit review, and a couple of things stood out. One is that peer mentoring works really well for supporting the success of all college students. But it works particularly well for first-gen students and students of color. There's something about that relationship with a fellow student that has kind of gone through your journey. And maybe they're still on the journey through college, but they're a little bit ahead of you. And there's something powerful about that for first-gen and students of color. But then I thought, there are all kinds of mentoring programs out there, and some are rooted in kind of some theory and some are not, right? So I thought, I want to ground this in some kind of theory, right? And so, again, I did a lit search and I came across college life coaching. And this is a way of supporting student success that is shown to benefit student retention. And so I thought, okay, that's great. Who's doing this and who's doing this well? And I came across a program at a university that kind of has a similar population as CCSU. And they had a robust college life coaching program. And at that program, the coaches are postgraduate professionals. So these are people that have graduated from college, and their full-time job is coaching other students. So I reached out to the director of advising at that university who developed that coaching program. And I thought, you have a really good program. I've been awarded this grant to develop a peer coaching initiative. Would you be interested in perhaps orienting us to your model? So the person that I reached out to said, sure. Right. And so we invited her up to our university, and she trained us in the model that they use, and also conducted the initial training of our students that we selected for that first cohort in 2014. And so we implemented it, and the data looked really good. We worked with only Black and Latina students, and the retention rates were solid. And so we have grown and have continued to be supported under President Toro's leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. Now, Tori, you and I had the opportunity to speak yesterday about your experience as a student with Success Central, and I was really inspired by what you shared. So I was hoping that you could take us to the very beginning. How did you learn about Success Central, and what was your experience in the program as a mentee?
Yeah, of course. So my journey with Success Central started back when I was a sophomore in my undergraduate. So I'd gotten through my freshman year. I was kind of starting to pick up kind of the ins and outs of Central as a college and kind of just college life in general. And I'd been through registering for classes. I've been through kind of some of the basic stuff that you have to do in college. And looking back, I do think that I put a lot of extra stress on myself and a lot of extra stress in trying to figure everything out by myself. So the summer before my sophomore year, I get this email about a peer mentoring program, and I definitely was interested. I was doing fine academically, but the email highlighted that it was more than academics. It was more than just tutoring. It was really about connecting with somebody who's on a similar path as me and somebody who kind of knows the ropes a little bit more than I did at that point. So I figured I'd give it a try, and I never really looked back from there. My experience itself with the program, immediately, me and my mentor hit it off. So going into the first meeting, I definitely had some feelings of being unsure or some reservations. Do I really want this? Is this really something that I need to do? But in that first meeting, all of those thoughts kind of subsided. It was really helpful for me to kind of be hearing from a student who was taking classes that I was planning on taking. It was really helpful to hear from a student who had taken the same professors that I was taking at that point, because that gave us even more common ground to talk about. And I think it was also beneficial having somebody who could kind of relate when I was feeling frustrated about things. And she really validated my feelings of frustration with her own experiences at Central. So she really did a really good job of making me feel like I'm not alone and I'm not the only student going through this. So when I would do really well on a test or a project that was for a class that was known to be very hard for students, she really understood why that was a big deal to me. Because generally I was good in classes, but really understanding this one project or this one assignment was huge. And I'm really proud of that. So even after the first couple of sessions, after the first meeting, it really didn't feel like another meeting that I had to go to. It was really something that I could look forward to doing and somebody that I looked forward to talking to.
Mm-hmm. Now, you made the transition from being a mentee and participant in the program to becoming a mentor and eventually a coordinator for the program. If you could just talk a little bit about how that transition took place and what has it meant for you to mentor and coach first generation students at Central.
So with my experience as a mentee, I think the transition to a mentor was really easy because as a mentee, I loved the program and it was easy for me to see the benefits that I was getting. And it was really helpful when my mentor would be like, I hope you can see the progress because this is what I can see in you. This is the progress that I've seen you make. One of the things that I really got from it was helping my time management. As a freshman, I really didn't get involved in campus with activities or with clubs. I really kind of just went to class, and that was the extent of what I did with Central. So as a sophomore and having the program and a mentor who helped me get involved with things like the psychology club or Psych-Chi, the Honor Society, or more involved in Success Central and the events that Success Central would put on, really helped me to manage having a number of responsibilities on my plate. And I think this experience really helped me going into my junior year and my senior year, because I had more responsibilities and more of a time commitment than I ever had before. So nearing the end of my sophomore year, my mentor kind of in one of our sessions asked me, is this something that you would be interested in? So she told me about her day in and day out, kind of the requirements for the program, what she got from it, and then ended that with, she really thought that I would like the program, but more importantly, that she thought that I really would be able to help other students. So I went for it, and I really haven't looked back ever since.
Now, one of the things that you shared with me yesterday during our conversation is that you identify as a first generation student. So what has it meant to you as a first gen student to now be in the role of supporting first generation students in this capacity?
Kind of like I said before, going through my freshman year, I do feel like looking back, there was a lot that I was missing. And I also think that because I really didn't have anybody in my family who kind of knew what that experience was like, and there was really not anybody that could kind of guide me through some of the basic things outside of classes, like registration itself and choosing professors or making sure that I was staying on track with prereqs. I do wish that I had reached out sooner, because I think I could have been a lot more involved, but I'm very glad that I got involved when I did.
Thank you, Tori. Now, Dr. Toro, my next question is for you. And I want to start by saying that I'm honored to have you with us today as the president of Central and as an esteemed ASCII board member. You are leading the first public university in the state of Connecticut, as the first woman to serve as president and the first Latina to serve as chief executive. And on top of all of this, you have demonstrated a strong commitment in developing higher education leaders through mentorship. So if you could please share a little bit about your commitment to mentorship, where it originated from, and why do you believe, as a university president, that it's important for campuses to create mentorship opportunities such as Success Central for their students?
Let me start by saying that I am here because a number of mentors I had in my career. It goes back to when I was an undergraduate student and a faculty member identified me as a person he wanted to mentor. That faculty member had a very, very impactful influence in me, to the point that he was the one who guided me to go to Georgia Tech to pursue my doctoral degree, because he got his undergraduate degree from Georgia Tech. So he was the first mentor I had, even though at that time I didn't know that he was serving as a mentor. But later in my life, when I finished my doctoral degree and went back to Puerto Rico, I realized that I had a very strong mentor while I was finishing my PhD. I was blessed with having the opportunity to work with him and for him to serve as a mentor for me. Then, when I started my career as a young faculty member at the University of Puerto Rico, again, people identified me and they started serving as mentors to me. Again, through all my career, I have had mentors, to the point that sometimes still I can call some of them. And I am so thankful to all of them. For me, it's important to give back a little bit of everything I have been blessed with. And that's why I firmly believe in mentoring people. I was thinking about all the people who I have had the pleasure of working with, from undergraduate students to individuals who are currently university presidents who has worked with me, and I have the pleasure of mentoring them. And when I hire members of my team who may have not had that type of experience before as an executive, it's my pleasure to mentor them. I am a very demanding mentor, if you will, but I am very pleased to have the opportunity to mentor people. I firmly believe that as an institution of higher education, we have to have plenty of mentorship programs. We have a lot of students that we work with in transforming their lives. And that is the beauty of being in higher education, the opportunity you are afforded to transform lives. And I think that once the students come here, it's our responsibility to facilitate their success. And I think mentorship and these type of programs serve that purpose. Not only that, we are in the process creating individuals that are able to give back, like Tori. Once they finish the degree with us, they feel that these programs has been so good to them that they feel the sense and the responsibility to give back. So if you look at what we're talking about here, is a full circle in terms of us being afforded the opportunity to benefit from a program, and then for us to be able to give back and help other individuals. You know what? It's at the heart of this. We are all human beings. We have needs, the need to belong, the need to feel that somebody cares about us. And that's what mentorship is all about.
Thank you, Dr. Toro. Dr. Simmons, I would like to turn back to you. Data from recent studies has shown that students in Success Central experience 5% to 20% higher retention rates than their non participating peers. From your perspective, how does the program remain effective at keeping students not only engaged, but equipped to continue their journeys toward post secondary degrees? And thinking of our listeners, who I imagine will be inspired by your success, what do you believe has been that secret sauce with this program at Central?
The wonderful thing about that persistence data is that the gains maintain even 2 years later, right? Where the students that go through Success Central have higher rates of retention than the comparison group up to 2 years later. And in multiple years, the difference grows over time. So we really are giving students skills to continue to grow and thrive as a student. So, there's an old proverb that I'm sure we all know, right? You give a person a fish, they eat for a day, but if you teach them how to fish, they'll eat forever. So Success Central is in the teach them how to fish business. Our goal ultimately is to work ourselves out of a job. When the students finish Success Central after an academic year of working with us, our goal is to see that they are thriving and that they have the skills to go on and do well on their own. We don't do the work for them. All right. Our goal is to identify what are the challenges or barriers that might be getting in the way of a student being optimally successful. And in college life coaching, that involves looking at all areas of a student's life. Right? For some students, it might be family issues or challenges. For others, it could be work-life balance. Some of our students work a lot of hours. Right? And how do you manage that and still perform to your optimal ability in school? Other students, as Tori mentioned, may have roommate challenges or social challenges or feel like they don't belong at the university. Right? They're not engaged on campus. So we look at all areas of their life. That's why it's called college life coaching. And we work with the mentee on identifying, okay, so how can we address this? How can we get you more connected on campus? How can we help you to feel like you belong on campus, as President Toro mentioned, which is really huge. And so a big part of what we do is through that mentoring relationship, that personal connection with the student, we identify what are the resources on campus that can address whatever particular issue you're experiencing, and try to connect that student to that resource. At times, that may involve the mentor actually walking with the mentee to that resource. It's a really powerful relationship. So that's the overall goal, is to support the student to develop these skills, the confidence, and belief in their own academic efficacy, right? that they can go on and succeed even after they leave us. But you mentioned the persistence data, which is really important. But also, we give a survey at the beginning of the relationship and again at the end, fall to spring, that looks at their sense of belonging on campus and their sense of what's called academic self-efficacy, which basically is their belief in their academic skills, right? And consistently, we see a gain between pre and post in those areas. And so not only are we affecting retention, but we're also affecting their sense of belonging to the institution and efficacy, which is really important for persistence. Because a student maybe they get that bad grade in a course, right? But if they feel like they belong on campus, that might help them to persist, right, and continue and persevere. So we try to impact those areas as well. So it's really that key relationship with the peer mentor that really makes a difference. I would say the secret sauce involves a few things. It's not one thing. One thing is we work hard to select the right junior and senior students to be mentors. We strive for diversity in our mentors, diverse by race, ethnicity, gender, but also kind of way of being. We try to non-traditional versus students that maybe started in their freshman year, transfer students as mentors. We strive to have a diverse group of mentors that represent our students. That's important. And not every junior and senior is ready to be a mentor. For example, we've developed questions over the years that we think do a really good job of screening students who want to be a mentor. We have a nice list of questions that we use that screen effectively. And based on those questionnaires that we give potential mentors, we interview the mentors live, either in person or virtual. So there's a couple of steps that we go through to choose those junior and senior students to be mentors. That's important, choosing the right students. It's not just about GPA either. Even though you have to have a minimum GPA to be a mentor, but also what is your orientation? Why do you want to be a mentor? It can't just be another activity for you. Training is really important. And we train them in our model, which is a 4-phase model. And I think that's important because these are our students. And I think that they need something to work with. About 5.5, 6-hour training beginning of the year. That's important. And then what subsequently is important is regular ongoing supervision. And that's where the class comes in. So we meet weekly for class. And that's our mechanism for supervising and supporting the students. So that's something that's really important to provide ongoing support and guidance for our mentors as they develop their skills. Also, I created a senior management team as well once we grew. And I created a mentor coordinator position, which is Tori's role. And we also have experienced peer mentors who were peer mentors the prior year, who we select as senior mentors. And Tori and the senior mentors are paid as student workers or graduate assistants. So they're paid and they work with me to oversee and run Success Central. And the way we do it is we divide up and we each supervise a group of mentors. And then we kind of come together. So the senior mentors, who are also students themselves, are supervising peer mentors. So it's a great opportunity for them, right? And a great leadership development opportunity for them.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. Tori?
The only thing that I would add, I think our program is set up with all of those things, the principles of coaching, the phases of coaching. I think our program is set up to be effective. And with the training, I think that really helps. But I think if it came down to asking what the secret sauce is, I think it's in the relationships. And I think from my experience, I think it really is having a connection with somebody and having a relationship with somebody that you know is in your corner. You know, they're supporting you on your own individual journey. I'm here to help you get to where you want to be. I'm not here to tell you where I think you should be going. And I think that goes for the mentors and the mentees.
Dr. Toro, I see you nodding. Did you want to add something to what Tori was just sharing?
As I mentioned before, we are all human beings and we need to feel that somebody cares, that somebody is there to listen to us, that somebody is there to guide us. And I think that that's part of the success of this program. Yes, it's a very, I will say, theory based program. It's well documented in terms of the processes and procedures we use, is very formal, but at the end of the day, we are equipping the mentors to be able to establish successful relationships with the mentees.
Can I just add one thing, Leticia? I want to build off
Yes.
kind of what Tori mentioned about relationships and kind of add to the secret sauce. So in our sessions, it's about the relationship, but it's also very kind of very action oriented interaction in the session. For example, at the end of every session, the mentors will identify an action step with their mentee that they agree that the mentee will strive to pursue before the next session. And that action step is designed to be kind of a step towards the goal that the mentor and mentee have identified. So through that relationship, we're helping the student to kind of make steps towards achieving their goal. And then when they come back that next session, we'll ask them, so how did it go with that action step? How did it go maybe meeting with that tutor, right, or meeting with that professor? And if there were any challenges to pursuing that action step, we'll ask them, well, what got in the way of doing that? And let's kind of brainstorm how to address that. So through the relationship, we're able to kind of hold the mentee accountable for pursuing the goals that they want to accomplish. And that's really a testament to the relationship.
Thank you so much. Now, I wanted to hear from you, Dr. Toro. What does the success of this program and retaining students mean to you as the president?
First of all, I am very appreciative of the outstanding work to Dr. Simmons and all the students who has been part of the program as mentors or mentees have done. It's a success because all of them. But to be able to have a program that to me is best practice and that we can share what we are doing with other universities, I am so proud. But also, when we are working with other programs within our campus, I can point to a program that it's successful, and other programs can learn from what have worked for this program and then replicate, if you will, the type of practices that we have in place. So it's a program that helps our students, but help our staff also learn about what practices are working and how they can impact more students. Because as you may realize, the program has a limited capacity and we have more students who are in need of this type of support, who are in need of this type of programs. So we can impact more and more students learning from what is working for this program. So I am extremely proud and thankful, honestly. And I really invite my colleagues, other university presidents, to learn about these type of programs and to commit to these type of programs.
Absolutely. And I anticipate that our listeners will be very much inspired. And so, Dr. Simmons, I will not be surprised if you get quite a few calls after this podcast goes live. Now, Dr. Simmons, I've had the honor of interviewing you before about Success Central. And one of the things that I was particularly impressed by was your collaborative and resourceful approach in building Success Central and the way that you engage the computer science department in enhancing the effectiveness of the program. Can you please walk us through how that partnership came about between Success Central and the computer science program, and how has this collaboration benefited the program and Central students?
So we were serving about 60 students a year until 2019 through 2018. And it was going well. We were paying students as student mentors, as student workers to be mentors. And we had a nice tight cohort of about 8 mentors. I think Tori was one of those 8. And cohesive group, we would meet, we would talk about the work with their mentees. It was great. But the question became, how can we expand and grow this to serve more students? And there wasn't really much funding to grow and expand the program at the time, because as President Toro, I think, can attest to, funding from state governments has gone down over the years versus up. So there's some constraints there. So how can we grow this? So I spoke to some colleagues, and what came out of that discussion was, well, how about instead of paying mentors, they receive academic credit to be a mentor and enroll in a class? And I thought, that's a promising idea. And so I was told about a class that was already in our books called First Year Experience 301 Peer Leadership Seminar that wasn't being used. So I adopted that class, created a section of that class. And from that point on, students that we recruit to be mentors would enroll in that class and earn academic credit to be mentors. And so with that same funding that we had before, we went from being able to serve 60 students to capacity to serve about 180 students a year. So we tripled our capacity in 1 year. And we went from having 8 mentors to, I believe we had maybe 25 mentors in 1 year. However, that's a big jump in a year. When we were serving 60 students, I would manually match the mentor to mentee by looking at their student records. And that's doable with 60 students, but untenable when you're serving north of 150. So I thought, well, how can I kind of make this a bit more of an efficient, doable process? Because, I'm a full-time professor. That's kind of like my day job. And this is kind of something that's a labor of love. So I reached out to the computer science department, and I spoke to one professor about this. And I thought, is there any kind of app or technology that could help with this matching process? And he thought, this could be a good project for my summer graduate class. So he had a graduate course that summer in software engineering, and they were looking for a project. And so this became their summer project that year. So summer of 2019, they developed a web-based application that partially automates the matching process. My students at the time called it a dating app. So in essence, the mentor enters information about themselves: gender, race, ethnicity, languages spoken, town of origin, hobbies, interests, for example. The mentee enters very similar information, and the app identifies potential matches. And the best part about this program is it gives me about 5 choices based on percentage match to the mentor. And it tells me where the matches lie, right? So some students may match on gender, others on major, others on town of origin. So I can see where the similarities lie. So it still gives me some agency to choose a particular mentor for that mentee among those 5 based on where they match. And that's important because I've learned over the years that for some mentees, some things may be more important than others. For example, for our computer science mentees, it's really important they be matched to a computer science major whenever possible. There's just certain things about that major that really benefit from having a mentor that's gone through that major.
I love that story, Dr. Simmons, because what is coming up for me is some of the common challenges that we face in higher education, that we see in higher education when it comes to program implementation. And one of those challenges is budget. So by reaching out to your colleague in computer science and leveraging internal expertise at your institution, you were able probably to save the budget in developing this software program. Now, the second thing that is coming up for me is silos. Higher education is known for working in silos. And I think many of our listeners could probably relate to that we struggle with working in silos and breaking those silos. And what I'm hearing is that you broke the silo by reaching out to your colleagues and building this collaboration between computer science and your program. Now, the third reason why I love what you just shared is that you scaled this program. And that's another challenge that I think many of us face in higher education when we have a very promising program that's supporting student success. Well, clearly, the story that you just shared is a perfect example of how you can scale a program through an internal collaboration, right? You had a capacity constraint in the matching process, but through this software, you were able to scale your program from 60 students to 180. And again, all because of this approach centered in collaboration and in leveraging internal institutional resources. So I love hearing that story and I commend you for that.
Thank you, Leticia. I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. Now, Tori, what would you say to a first generation student who might be considering participating in the program?
My biggest thing would be if you're hesitant, I would say just give it a try. That's what I did. And I think it's completely changed my entire kind of college path. It's changed my career outlook and kind of what I'm looking into now. And it's really something that going into it, I didn't have many expectations of it. I kind of went in with an open mind and I got so much from this program, kind of just skills that are going to help me going forward in my career, communication skills, interpersonal skills working with people who are different than me, but then also just things that are on my resume now. I've done conference presentations. We've gone to San Diego, we've gone to New Orleans, and I never would have had those opportunities had I not said, yes, I'll give it a shot to a program like this.
And I have to add, hope you don't mind me sharing this, Tori, but I remember you saying when we did go to New Orleans for that conference presentation, I remember you saying it was your first time on a plane. So now when we've presented a couple of times since then in different cities, and Tori is like super bold, and she's leading the team of mentors, and they're going around town and making, really making the most of the experience. So I love that. It's been a pleasure to see Tori grow, right? And that's something that for me is probably the biggest benefit for me of being involved in Central over the past 10 years. I'm able to work with these students across multiple years, right? So I've had mentors be mentors for 2 years, right? At times, and Tori's been involved for I don't know how long. But to see these students grow and develop over the years, to see these students go from students, young people, but they become professionals. That is a big benefit. And I think it's kind of a relatively unique thing as a professor to be able to work with students across years and see their development. And that's been really rewarding for me, and been rewarding to see Tori develop.
And the full circle, right? The full circle that
Yes.
President Toro mentioned at the beginning, seeing the way that a student who benefits from being a mentor, very similar to your story, right, President Toro, that you were mentored, that inspired you to become a mentor and develop other leaders, and it becomes this cycle of support and success that works out very well, and it's very inspirational to see when it happens. Now, as we reach the end of our podcast episode, I would love to ask if any of you have anything that you would like to add, any thoughts, experiences, or reflections that you would like to share. And Dr. Toro, I'd love to start with you.
Yes, thank you, Leticia. Central is about applied learning. And this program, beside serving as a mechanism for us to help students being successful, help our students apply what they are learning in the classroom to help other students and to find a professional path.
Dr. Simmons, and then we'll end with you, Tori.
Sure. So, I mentioned how just a minute ago how this has benefited mentors, right, as well as mentees. And I have multiple examples of this, and I've received correspondence from former mentors and mentees. But I just received one about a month ago. I think Tori received it as well from a mentor from this past year. And I just want to read this email out. This was a student, a mentor who was reserved, was kind of growing in her ability to engage with her mentee, right? And so we would have some individual meetings with her to kind of help her build her skills. We would make sure she was involved in class when we were role-playing skills. And I wanted to kind of read this email from her. And this was totally something that she did on her own, just impromptu after the class ended. Hello, Dr. Simmons and Tori. I wanted to express my gratitude to you and the Success Central team for a great experience. I learned a lot in terms of emotional intelligence, being a good listener, and many more skills that will stay with me throughout my life. Thank you for the work that you do and for giving me the opportunity to be a part of such an amazing team. Also, thank you, Tori, for being a great leader and someone we can rely on. Thank you.
Tori, what was it like to hear the email that Dr. Simmons just read?
I'm glad that I had kind of the heads up because I had already read it, because that will always stick with me. Hearing mentors in their reflections or in emails really thanking me for what I've done for them. I mean, it's huge. It's a big reason why I keep coming back, because I know I'm making an impact. And I think for me, it's easy to kind of get caught up in just day to day and kind of just doing the job itself. But I do really try to be there for all of my students as much as I can. So hearing that I'm actually helping them and hearing that they had a good experience and part of that was because of me, I mean, you can't really get better than that. Like, that's great. But I'm glad that I had the heads up, because I probably would have got a little emotional.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. So I do have one other example to share. So on top of all of kind of the highlights that I've gotten from the program and all of the mini victories or the goals I've seen my students achieve along the way, there's one student in particular who I think really shows me how special this program is and how beneficial it can be. So going back a couple years ago, I had a mentee who joined as a freshman. It was also the first year of COVID learning. So she was starting out her college career with all online classes at a college that she'd never stepped foot on. She'd never been a student on the physical campus. So I was able to kind of help her maneuver through not only the logistics of online classes and online learning, but also I kind of acted as that piece to help her feel connected to the university, given she hadn't been here yet. And I helped her feel kind of a part of the community that was here and feel connected to the university. So we met her entire freshman year. And then when recruitment came up the following year, I reached out to her and asked if it was something that she'd be interested in trying, because we had such a great relationship and I really did want her to come back and mentor, because I thought she would do a really good job. So I reached out, she did the interview with us, and we took her on as a mentor. So she mentored for her junior year. Her senior year, she stepped up and came back as a senior mentor. And this past spring, she just graduated with her bachelor's in psychological science and criminal justice. But what's even more special to me is that this fall, she's coming back as our grad assistant as she's completing her master's. So it just shows that it's a really unique and kind of special experience that I've been lucky to have and kind of see my own growth along the way, but also to see students that I've been there for make their own mark on campus.
Well, I want to thank all three of you for joining us. It's been a true pleasure and honor. I'm so glad that our audience gets to hear directly from you about the success of this program and the impact that it's had. I'm looking forward to hearing more great stories like this one and continuing the conversation surrounding the value of a college education. This has been the Ask You Telling Our Story podcast. As we continue this series, we will share stories from Ask You members who have taken bold steps to successfully support underserved students and their communities. Please get the word out about this important work by sharing this podcast with colleagues, teachers, students, family, and friends. It's available on Spotify, Apple, and many other podcast platforms. If you are an Ask You member with a promising practice that you wish to share, please visit AskYouTellingOurStory.org. Thank you for listening. Until next time.